Happy Halloween, trick-or-treaters! Welcome to the House of Forgotten Candy. Here you go, take some candy cigarettes, and a few Sugar Daddies maybe. And look, it's Mr. Bones! What are you doing with those eggs? For many people, Spree candies remain a nostalgic relic of Halloween's gone by. They had a hard candy shell with a tangy interior, and they came in a range of fruity flavors. They were also made by the Willy Wonka Candy Company, although the real-life version of the company was less Gene Wilder prancing around a whimsical factory and more, well, Nestle.
Help. Police. Murder.
The original Spree candies had a slightly crumbly dextrose interior that was much tartar than you might expect. Think of them kinda like Skittles' mustachioed evil cousin. Later, Chewy Spree was released, which had the same hard shell but with a chewier, less tart center. Whatever your preference may have been, these ones don't turn up much on Halloween anymore, mostly because they're so much harder to find. You can sometimes pick them up in drug and dollar stores, but you're unlikely to find them in the supermarket. Or, in other words,
you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
If you're decrepit enough to remember as far back as the 1990s, or God forbid, any of the decades before that, then you've probably come across a Sugar Daddy before. In case you haven't, well, it's basically just an old-fashioned block of caramel on a stick. Generally, you worked on it slowly until you either gave up or swapped candy with a sibling. And while these things were a regular sight among trick-or-treaters back in ye olden days, you won't see them around much anymore.
For kids, mister, for kids.
Why? Maybe it's the name, which, well, come on. Yeesh. Or it could be because this was the kind of candy that felt like it could pull the teeth right out of your mouth. Cavities are the least of your problems when you're eating something that causes what can only be described as a whole mouth dental evacuation. Either way, these things are basically extinct these days. You can sometimes find them in Dollar Tree or Cracker Barrel stores, but even then, they're probably best avoided. After all, the last thing anyone needs is a bunch of trick-or-treaters coming to their house and demanding they get their Sugar Daddies. Here's another one you can file under what the heck was everyone thinking? Candy cigarettes. We've known for a long time that smoking is really bad for you. And yet, people would hand these things out to kids on Halloween like it was quitting time at Sterling Cooper.
Our hands are tied. We're no longer allowed to advertise that Lucky Strikes are safe.
The candy cigarette was the ultimate in acquired taste. To the generation who occasionally chomped down on some schoolhouse chalk, that sugary accent to the dry, mouth-drying flavor was heaven. Plus, it looked like a little smoke came out of the end. It's like Philip Morris invented them themselves. To everybody else, these were disgusting. And truthfully, they kinda are if you weren't old enough to try them. Speaking of, for you younger folks, great news. If you're curious, you can actually get a hold of these candies nowadays, although they're now called candy sticks and no longer come in packs that look like cigarette cartons, for the most obvious of reasons. Sometimes, a Halloween candy disappears from our lives so hard that it becomes basically impossible to find decent pictures of it on the internet. With that in mind, please bear with us while we fill in the gaps on this one. Mr. Bones consisted of a number of individual bone-shaped sweets that you could fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. It also came with a plastic coffin that you could lay your candy skeleton to rest in. Macabre, maybe, but old Bonesy was totally in keeping with the spirit of Halloween. And let's face it, few candies nowadays are quite as innovative as he was. Alas, Mr. Bones was discontinued in the 90s. Most likely because nobody had much need for a skeleton-themed candy on the 364 days of the year that weren't Halloween. Necco Wafers are pretty much just thin, sweet, coin-shaped discs with a drywall-like texture. Each color is a different flavor. You had licorice, lemon, lime, orange, chocolate, cinnamon, clove, and wintergreen, whatever that is. For decades, they were a staple on Halloween, but you'll rarely see them turn up in a kid's trick-or-treat haul these days. Why? Well, for one thing, they suck. The dry, crumbly, chalky mouthfeel is a seriously hard sell next to today's chocolates or chewy gummies. The flavors are unapologetically old school too, meaning most modern kids aren't going to touch them with a 50-foot pole. You can still find them though, if this inexplicably sounds like your kind of thing. Necco Wafers disappeared for a couple of years when the company that made them went out of business, but they were revived by another manufacturer soon after, for better or for worse. Mary Jane candies feel like the sort of treat your grandma would have kept in a jar in the kitchen. A dense, chewy peanut butter and molasses sweet wrapped in wax paper. They're not glamorous, no. There's no glossy chocolate or neon packaging, but they have got a sorta homespun folksy charm, in a Little House on the Prairie kind of way.
Snipe yourselves, long-legged snipes. Snipe, snipe, long-legged snipes.
so why don't you see them on porches much anymore? Well, let's just say that the flavor is something of an acquired taste. Molasses gives Mary Jane candies a deep, not quite sweet edge that sits far from the bright gummies and milk chocolates kids now expect on Halloween. Their chewiness is another strike against them. Whole generations of dentists built their livings off repairing the damage caused by candies like this. They're also pretty nutty, and most people tend to avoid peanut-forward candies on Halloween for the sake of safety. Perhaps more than anything else, though, the fall of Mary Jane candies can be attributed to the fact that we're now living in the 21st century. Or to put it another way, nobody cares about Little House anymore. Chiclets were neat little rectangles of candy-coated gum that ended up becoming hugely popular Halloween treats back in the 70s and 80s. Despite being gum that you should definitely not swallow, most kids were still happy to get them in their haul. These days, though, Chiclets seem to have vanished from the face of the earth. They're not technically discontinued, but they're still extremely hard to find, and you certainly can't just pick up a big bag of them at your local grocery store. If for whatever reason you do miss Chiclets, specialty candy stores and online retro shops sometimes stock small boxes of them. Maybe best not to hand them out at Halloween, though. The modern world has kind of moved on from the idea that gum is an appropriate candy to give to kids, in much the same way that we've all moved on from Iran-Contra and the Bee Gees.
Alvin, do you have anything to add? Nah.
Remember Zagnut bars? These once popular Halloween candies had a peanut butter center coated in toasted coconut. They gave off a vintage candy shop vibe that many trick-or-treaters loved, and they eventually became so iconic that they even turned up in Beetlejuice.
I got something good for you. Come on over.
Zagnuts have mostly disappeared from the Halloween bowls of today, though. Part of this may be because of the taste. Coconut can be divisive to begin with, and mixing it with peanut butter isn't exactly a winning flavor pairing. Plus, as we've seen with Mary Jane candies, many folks prefer not to give out peanut-based treats for safety reasons. The last thing anyone needs is for a tiny Dracula to go into anaphylactic shock on their porch. It also doesn't help that you can't really find mini Zagnut bars anymore, which means that anyone who wants to give them out will need to buy a load of the full-size versions. And come on, in this economy, these little orange and black wrappers and the peanut butter blobs inside them are an autumnal icon still today, even if you don't recognize the name Peanut Butter Kisses. Notably, they're not to be confused with Hershey's Kisses. Instead, these are taffy-like candies with peanut butter folded into a molasses sweet base. They're not a branded candy either, so much as they're made by several manufacturers. Complexities aside, you'll no doubt recognize them if you did your trick-or-treating a couple of decades ago or more. Oh hey, a pumpkin! Neat! Candies like these date back to the early 1900s. For many years, they turned up in trick-or-treat bags because they were affordable, plentiful, and came in seasonally themed wrappers. These days, though, they're trickier to find. Online stores and specialty outlets might stock them, but most mainstream places won't, and the vast majority of people aren't going to spend their precious time sourcing the internet looking for Halloween candies. And then there's the taste. The molasses-forward, slightly old-fashioned profile of Peanut Butter Kisses may have been appropriate for the time, but these candies still split opinion harder than Hawaiian pizza. Bit-O-Honey candies are honey-flavored taffies with little almond pieces throughout. They're kinda like Mary Jane's in a way. Both are chewy, taffy sweets with a nutty twist. However, Mary Jane candies are made with peanut butter and molasses. They've got a sweet and salty flavor and a smooth finish. Bit-O-Honey candies, meanwhile, are more straight-up sweet with a honey flavor. Each piece comes individually wrapped too, making them a perfect choice for the Halloween treat bowl. And yet, if you've hit the streets trick-or-treating with kids lately, you'll know it's no longer a go-to offering during spooky season. You've probably identified a pattern with some of these candies by now, namely that many of them don't taste all that good. And guess what? That's exactly the case here too. Originally made in the 1920s, Bit-O-Honeys haven't been new or exciting for 100 years. Medicinal penicillin is a more current invention than these things. Obviously, everyone has their own thoughts and feelings on the matter, but many people saw them as old-fashioned treats even back in the day, so it only makes sense that more modern sweets would have taken over in recent years. It's just the natural way of things. Old-school Fifth Avenue bars have a dense, flaky peanut butter core wrapped in a thin coat of milk chocolate. They're similar to Butterfingers, but with a richer, even more peanutty flavor and less in-your-face sweetness. There was once a time when Fifth Avenue bars sat comfortably alongside the big seasonal minis, usually making their way into every kid's Halloween haul. They were also a sensible, slightly grown-up offering for adults raiding the candy bowl. Lately, though, they've begun to see more and more old-timey. That retro vibe is part of the charm to many, but it also works against them in a market that rewards the big brands everyone knows. On top of that, Fifth Avenue bars haven't been widely available in fun-size packs for years, and go big or go home isn't necessarily a useful mantra when it comes to plying kids with sugar.